All right, now joining us from the Idaho Press and Blue Turf Sports, it's one of my favorite guests in the Mountain West Conference that we get to talk to. It's BJ Rains joining you here on the Full Court Press with Eric Frantz and myself, Ajay Salveson. BJ, thanks for your time.
No problem, guys. What's going on in Logan?
Just beautiful.
Bundling up.
Great, warm, sunny.
Staying dry.
Freaking freezing weather.
Dusting off the powder skis.
Hey, BJ, I got to start here. This game against Air Force, and I watched this, was one of the most atrocious ref games I've ever seen, in so much that Leon Rice gets ejected, and rightfully on his part to argue it. When you talk to Coach Rice after, what is his thoughts, about just, in general, the mood of the locker room, losing a game like that to Air Force, but really a poorly officiated game?
Yeah, it's always tough because he doesn't want to blame the officials as the reason they lost. He's not trying to make excuses. But when he got the two technical fouls with 19 seconds left in the first half, the fouls were 11-2. And I think the free throw attempts were 13-2 or something. So you're in a close game, and he felt consistently that they were on the wrong end of a lot of close calls. And so there was what looked like a charge. He didn't get the call. And then the next possession there was a travel called on Boise State, and then he said something and got the first one. I think after he got the first one, he got, really frustrated, wanted to get his money's worth, and he had a couple of players holding him back, which he said made it look worse than it really was because he wasn't really going to charge at the ref or whatever, but it looked like that. So he got the second tee and got the heave-ho, and he said the worst part was trying to find a TV back in the bowels of the Clune Arena to find a way to watch the rest of the game. He almost went up and sat in the stands, but he wasn't sure if he was allowed to do that, and finally found some athletic department staffer that had a TV that got the channel and was able to watch most of the second half. But, disappointing, obviously. But you look at Air Force, and obviously Utah State fans know what Air Force can do at Clune Arena. So it can be a sneaky, tough place to play. And Air Force had some weird losses early in the season, but they're a good team. When you've got Ryan Swan and Lavelle Scotty, and then you throw in some of the other guards they have and the way they shoot the three, Air Force can be a dangerous team. And so, it's been kind of an up-and-down year for Boise State, and that was certainly a down moment for them. But I think in general they're just trying to flip the page, and they know obviously that it's going to be a big one tomorrow night.
BJ, Utah State and Boise State have had really interesting contests whenever they face each other, particularly whenever they play in Boise, regardless of what the regular season or even conference records are. I don't know that I see anything that is going to prove to be different coming into this one. Utah State's been up and down. Boise State's had some different games. But this Boise State team has some pretty dynamic players that led by Alston primarily. At least what I've seen is he seems to be one of the more consistent guys on the season. But am I missing somebody else that has been most consistent player for the Broncos so far this year?
Well, he's their leading scorer, so he's obviously the guy. And the problem is they've got a couple of guys, but in some of the games they've lost, Alston and Justinian Jessup and some of their best players have all been cold on the same night. So if they could just spread it out and have one or two guys still have big games when someone else is cold, they just haven't really had enough guys pick up the slack when some of their star players are down. And so, in the game at San Diego State last Saturday, I think Alston only had 6 points. And Justinian Jessup is the Mountain West, he's the Boise State all-time three-point leader right now. He just set the Boise State record last week, and he's only about 15 three-pointers from breaking Jimmer Fredette's Mountain West record. So he's going to be the all-time three-point leader. He's almost at 300 made threes in his career. So, he has the ability to go 5 for 6 in a game, but he's had a couple games this year where he's gone 1 for 7 or 1 for 8. So they need him to be a little more consistent from three. They shoot a lot better. They just play a lot better at home. I think that's been, as you guys have seen across the Mountain West, a lot of these puzzling scores. You're getting San Jose State winning some games at home. You had Colorado State the other night with the huge game over New Mexico hitting 19 threes. And it just seems like for whatever reason at home, versus the road, teams just play a lot different in this conference, and Boise State is no different. In that area, they're 8-1 at home, and I think 1-6 on the road. So they just play really well at home for whatever reason. I think Leon Rice is over 80% of his home games in his 10 years at Boise State. They've won, so they don't lose very often at home. They're expecting a big crowd tomorrow night because the students are back in and they're having a blue out. So I don't think it'll be a sellout, but it'll be probably the best crowd for sure they've had this season. So they just, they've lost 2 in a row, and this is a big game for them to try to, turn things around. And I think they're still pretty ticked off with how last year's game went. They didn't think that was a foul when Sam Merrill had the N1 to tie the game, and some of the other plays that happened in that game. They thought they should have had that game won. missed a couple free throws down the stretch and then lost in overtime. So they felt like they gave that one away. And to see Utah State go on the rest of the season and do what they did, they're really kicking themselves for that. So I think they're pretty motivated to have another shot since they didn't go to Logan last year. I think this is the first time they've played them, and I think they're pretty motivated to, we'll see if it's enough on the court, but I know they're pretty fired up to get a shot at the Aggies tomorrow.
BJ, excuse me, I know you kind of answered this, but as you mentioned, at ExtraMile Arena, Broncos are 8-1. On the road, they're 1-6. How do you explain that to somebody, that a team can be so poorly on the road, but at the same time, they've actually competed in these games, but when it comes to home games, they turn it on to a different level. It's incredible. Have you seen anything like that?
Well, I mean, look at the road games they've played. They played at San Diego State, at Nevada, at New Mexico. They've already played the 3 hardest places in the Mountain West to go play in the first 3 games. And then they already played at Oregon this year, and they had to go all the way and play at Tulsa. And then they played at Pacific. I mean, they've had a lot of road games already, and 4 of their 7 road games are very good teams when you throw Oregon in there with the 3 Mountain West games. So I think that's part of it. I mean, their home games, they've played San Jose, and they did beat UNLV at home, which was a nice win given what UNLV has done so far. They beat BYU at home, but BYU was a little shorthanded in that game. So they, but for the most part, I think it's just they just played differently on the road, and they've also played some tough teams on the road. I think is part of it. And life on the Mountain West on the road is hard, and Boise State might have one of the more extreme home versus road splits right now, and they kind of tell you to try to go 500 on the road and win your home games, and Boise State's obviously not doing that, but they're hoping with San Jose and some of the easier places to go still on the schedule that maybe they can get some more wins there. But no, I just think they're more confident. They shoot so much better at home. They for whatever reason, their 3-point percentage on the road is just terrible. They were at Nevada, they were like 5 of 30. It wasn't much better at. It ended up, I think, 10 of 30 at San Diego State, but they hit 3 or 4 in the last couple minutes of the game when it was well out of reach. So they're just more confident at home. They shoot better at home, and on a road game when other team would hit a couple buckets and the crowd would get behind them, it kind of rattles them a little bit. But it doesn't seem, at home when the crowd's behind them, they really feed off that, and I think it's been a big difference. So I know they're thankful to be at home and have a nice stretch of home games, starting to even back out here on the schedule.
Again, trying to better understand this team that Utah State will be facing on Saturday night for that 8 o'clock tip-off. Jessup and Alston, prolific scorers, a lot of attempts beyond the arc, pretty good three-point percentages. But besides them, I mean, you've highlighted them a little bit, but some of the other players that we might see that could be some dynamic players to watch out for.
Yeah, 2 guys actually coming off the bench, and the only reason they come off the bench is because they're both good enough and probably should be starting, but R.J. Williams is an inside guy. He's only 6'8", but he's left-handed, and he has really, really good post moves, and so he's kind of a sneaky guy, and he's he'll back down the bigger guys, and R.J. Williams is averaging in double figures, I believe, and Alex Hobbs is the other guy who was the 6th man of the year in the Mountain West and was starting for the first half of the season before they got the Oregon transfer eligible, Abu Kijab. So both those guys probably should be starting, but Leon likes to bring them off the bench because R.J. Williams fouls a lot, and they try to keep him out of foul trouble. And then with Hobbs, I think he just likes what he does off the bench in terms of a spark, a couple of minutes into the game. So those are 2 key guys that in crunch time will probably end up being out there, R.J. Williams and Alex Hobbs, who just don't start. And then, Kijab, the Oregon transfer that I mentioned, has been a big boost for him. He had 20 points against Air Force. It's been interesting because, you had him at the semester, and Derek Alston was used to having the ball in his hands a ton, Jessup too, and now, Kijab, is taking a lot of the ball handling away. And so it's been interesting as they're mix, and these other guys are having to try to get their shots too. And so I don't want to say it's been a negative because he's doing really well, obviously averaging well over 10 points a game, but I think it's taken some time for the other players in the offense to adjust to not having the guys that are used to taking all the shots. So if you can add a 4-star guy into your lineup that's averaging 14 a game, you'll definitely do it. So they're happy to have him. It's just taking mid-season like this, it's been a little bit of adjustment to work him into the mix.
BJ Rains of the Idaho Press and Blue Turf Sports joins us here on the Full Court Press, getting ready for the Broncos-Aggies matchup at ExtraMile Arena. It's a dangerous venue for any opponent to have to go into and try to get a much-needed win. At least it's going to be for the Aggies. When you see the Aggie squad, and I know you kept an eye on them as an AP Top 25 voter, I want to get into that in just a little bit, but when you see this Aggie squad, what has changed from the start of the season to now where they lost back-to-back games in just blowout fashion? and then finally got a big win against Nevada. But what are the things that you're seeing in their struggles?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing them in person because I watched a lot of their games on TV, and something just hasn't seemed right. It just doesn't. It's just hard to see. Even in some of the, it just. I know with Keita being in and out of the lineup has been a big part of it. It doesn't seem like at times, that the outside shooting and particularly Merrill, it has had from afar, it doesn't seem like he's been as lethal as maybe he has in the past. And some of these games where they really needed some scoring in the second half, he kind of disappeared. And so, I'm very curious because I can't really put my finger on it. And I'm actually getting ready to interview Coach Rice and a couple players, today for an article here. And I'm curious to see what they'll say about it because they're obviously uber talented. A lot of guys that are role players and other guys that burned at Boise State in the past, like Frito and these guys. I mean, they have a lot of key guys. And so I don't know. Something just hasn't really from far clicked. You guys would obviously probably know better than me, but it just at times hasn't seemed like they've been clicking on all cylinders. I think a lot of things went their way last year. A lot of shots went their way. They just had so much momentum and confidence and rode it right through the year. And I think everyone just assumed, and myself included, that they were just going to roll through the conference and be a top 20 team in the poll and get a high seed in the tournament. It's not that easy. It's hard when teams are looking out for you and you're getting everybody's best shot every night. So I think that's been part of it, where they've just had to been used to teams circling them on the schedule and going into sold-out crowds every game and having it be a huge game for the opponent. And so I think that's probably been part of it. But I would say maybe just some of their role players maybe haven't stepped up quite as much. And when it comes down to it, you got to get, Keita and Merrill have to be the two guys that lead them moving forward.
This is Ajay, I want to let you ask your top 25 question before I move off on another topic.
All right, so I got to ask, San Diego State is moving up the ranks and doing so in a quick fashion. You got to see them in person, and I have as well, but I want to know from a voter perspective, what impresses you about the Aztecs the most right now?
I think I've got them number 6 right now, and I had them a little higher for a while than some of the other voters, and everybody else is kind of caught up. But I've got them number 6 right now, and I think there were a couple teams that I'm trying to think off the top of my head that have lost this week, so I think they're going to move up even higher. I'll have them ahead of Auburn for sure. I don't remember where I had Oregon. I think I might have had they were probably below them, but I think somebody else lost that was ranked pretty high. So I'm going to probably have them, 4 or 5 this week, maybe higher. I don't know. Everyone keeps asking, are they legit? Are they for real? I mean, it's hard at this point to not say they're not. When they've beaten some of the teams they've beaten, Creighton, Iowa, going to BYU and winning there, and already getting the road win in Logan, beating a Utah team, handily that had just beaten Kentucky. So. Their resume is impressive, and they're winning. And the thing that's crazy to me is they're winning games by an average of like 19 points. I mean, they're not skeeting by in most of these games. They're just blowing teams out. And so when you've got the guard play they've got, and in the game against Boise State, KJ Fagan hit like 5 threes and had a career game. Malachi Flynn is just so impressive with the ball. He can shoot outside, but he also can get to the rack and make some of those floaters and stuff. You throw Matt Mitchell, a veteran, there, it's still there, and then what they're getting inside as well. They've got a lot of different options that can beat you, and they're again a team that has a huge home court advantage and has a very hard time, for opponents to come in there and win at home. So they're going to win a lot of games. I think Ken Pom still has them projected to finish the conference with 2 losses in the aggregate, but if you look at every single game, they're favored by at least 6 points, I think, the rest of the season. So they'll probably get tripped up somewhere, but I think they're making a strong case to try to put themselves in position for a number 1 or number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is crazy considering they weren't even the preseason pick in the league coming in.
And you kind of ran into my next question there. If there's anybody who could trip San Diego State up, who do you think that could be in this conference? I mean, they look there are no weaknesses in the squad, so who could it be?
Well, I mean, I just talked about them winning all these games in blowouts, but they actually almost lost at home to San Jose State. Mm-hmm. They needed a buzzer-beating 3-pointer at the buzzer. They would have lost at home to San Jose, which would have kind of fit perfectly with how crazy this conference season has been in college basketball this year with all these teams beating each other and on a seemingly nightly basis. Or losing to Washington State last is a stunner, and it just seems like every night we get one. So I don't think, someone's going to beat them, and it's not going to be a huge shocker, but it'll take somebody like Colorado State hitting 19 threes or Boise State hitting, 17 threes when they come to Boise in a couple weeks or something. It'll take some sort of crazy game like that, and it'll take some foul trouble probably on their end. They're very good, but I think someone will have to get hot from 3. Somebody will have to have a huge game. It'll probably be a road game. I think they still have to go to New Mexico, but who knows what's New Mexico, what kind of shape they're in with the Bragg being kicked off the team and everything else they're dealing with. But, who knows? Maybe going to Reno when they go to Reno and Reno's got those guards, and they've, had some, that maybe could be a spot I'd circle, a tough environment, a decent team, a good crowd. But I don't think they're going to lose too many games. They just have too much depth, too many spots inside and out they can beat you, and I think they're going to be, like I said, probably a team that's going to only lose 1 or 2 games going into the NCAA tournament.
All right, I want to shift the topic away from just specifically for this game this weekend or the Mountain West basketball, but just generally speaking, the Mountain West earlier this week, or I guess it was last week, announced a new media rights deal with Fox and CBS, which CBS was in there before, but it's an extension. It's a better deal for the Mountain West. Previously, in the old deal, Boise State specifically had some additional concessions on national broadcasts and home games and being able to kind of negotiate some things on their own. That's changing a little bit, and it looks like Craig Thompson has said this is the last time this is going to happen. In the new, whenever we come up for renewal, these kind of concessions won't happen again. What's the mood there around Boise about this new media rights deal and specifically how it affects the Broncos?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, it was a huge to not be on ESPN. I mean, Boise State's had a relationship with ESPN for almost 20 years. The games, are in the early 2000s. Boise State kind of built their brand by being willing to play on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. I mean, Boise State played on pretty much every night of the week to get on ESPN, and ESPN kind of helped them build their brand. And they've come. All their home games have been controlled by ESPN for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's just been to not have them at all on ESPN unless it's like a road game at BYU or something. It's just a lot of people are shocked by that. And when the college football playoff is on ESPN and you have the game day, and those guys kind of set the agenda and set the discussion points and talking points for the top group of 5 team and all that. And when you don't have any of your games on the ESPN networks, you're probably not going to get talked about as much as some of those other teams. And so I think that was certainly a surprise and a hit to some fans that they're not going to be on ESPN, but I think they want to wait and see what this means, because as part of the deal, some of the games are on regular Fox, and then there's a chance that some can be on regular CBS also. So if you're talking about, all these games on Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2, yeah, that's a huge, negative compared to what it was. But if you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 games a year being on Big Fox on a Saturday afternoon or something, they didn't have any ABC games on ESPN, so this would be better than what it was before. So I think that if they can get a CBS national game out of this as well, I mean, I think there's potential where it could be just as good, if not better, but I think we need to wait and see what kind of channels, what kind of game times end up getting set for all this. But, the other part is, you mentioned the money. Now, in this deal, they are going to get the extra money that they got before. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, a lot of people in Boise don't get it. The AD's not talking. The conference isn't talking. Craig Thompson, as you said, came out and said this will be the last time this is negotiated separately, and that all the other presidents or whatever feel that it should be even. But, I mean, it strictly says in Boise State's contract, when they rejoin the Mountain West, there's clear language that says that they would have their home games negotiated separately and be, able to get extra money from those games for this deal and any future subsequent deals. So in writing, it says Boise State should be getting this for the duration that they're in the Mountain West Conference. So I don't know if the other conference presidents just said, we're going to try to just, say, hey, we're not putting up with it anymore. This is what we're doing, and hope that Boise State's okay with it. I don't know if they just said this is what we're doing, and Boise State's, preparing a lawsuit to sue them. I don't know if, the new Boise State president didn't understand fully when she went to the meeting and agreed. No one really knows what happened or what is happening, but I don't think Boise State's very happy with it. We talked to the athletic director does a weekly radio show here or segment on a radio show, and he gave a no comment and didn't really seem interested in talking about it. So that's a question for the conference and didn't want to get into it. So he seems very unhappy with it, or he's unhappy with someone, whether it's the Boise State president for screwing it up or whether it's the league or there's some unanswered questions. There's a lot of uncertainty surround this, and I don't think we've heard the last of it. Boise State, again, in writing, it says they're going to get this extra money, which the last couple of years has been $1.8 million on top of whatever the share is. And if they're not going to get that moving forward, I think it's going to have to come out why, because it's been hard to figure out and hard to understand. And I'm a lot of people in Boise are still wanting to know the answers to some of these questions, and we'll see if we ever get them or how long it takes.
So
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a great answer right there. I got to ask you, do you think that there's a thought of maybe moving to another conference to actually take care of Boise State?
I mean, it's certainly possible, and certainly people, when they saw that the deal was only 5 years or whatever, and they saw that, I mean, certainly that was something that if Boise State does get, fed up enough with the conference and they're not getting the extra money and they can go to another conference where their guaranteed rights would be much bigger, that's certainly something they'd have to consider. It just comes down to, is this going to be football only? Would this be for all sports? I mean, people are talking out here about, as much as they don't like the American, they're like, well, what if we just went and joined the American Conference? And then you're talking about a football league that has Memphis and Cincinnati and UCF and Temple and all this. But do you really want your women's soccer team going to play, a conference game in Florida? I mean, it just depends if it's going to be football only. And at that point, I assume the Mountain West, if Boise State football left, wouldn't want to keep the rest of the teams in the league. So you'd have to, downgrade to the WAC or something, or the Big West or something. So who knows what's going to happen? There's a lot of things that are out there, but I wouldn't put it past them. A lot of people think the logical fit is the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 wanted to add 2 teams, San Diego State, Boise State would both seem to make some sense, but there's a lot of hurdles that have to be covered there before that would happen. But I think that's what Boise State would prefer to do, go to a Power 5 conference, the Pac-12. If the Big 12 ever expands, that would certainly be an option, but I don't know if, again, that would be, do you want to play a conference game for women's volleyball in Morgantown, West Virginia? I don't know. So there's a lot of things still to iron out, but I don't think that's off the table. I think that certainly is something that if they don't get the extra money they want, and another conference is willing to give it to them and it makes sense, that might be something they have to consider.
When you hear the commissioner say what he did about Boise State, that this could be, the whole entire, giving Boise State the benefit package because of what they are able to bring in revenue-wise, and he says he's going to put an end to that, do you, in your opinion, feel like that's almost a threat towards Boise State?
It could be. Yeah, I mean, again, we don't really know what happened. We don't know if all the presidents voted and the Boise State president didn't realize and go, everyone should get a fair thing. That sounds fair, because the Boise State president just came in office in July. So she's new. She probably, maybe there's a chance she did vote and agreed to it and didn't realize what she did. And the Boise State athletic director is just, mad at her. Maybe the other ADs voted without her and said, we're going to stop this, because as you guys know, there's been plenty of complaining. Not sure what words I can use on radio, but there's been plenty of complaining. I'll just say that about Boise State's, preferential treatment and the extra money they're getting and the extra TV games they're getting and things like that. So there has been, some unhappiness with some schools around the league. Nevada, San Diego State, I know, didn't like it, and a lot of the teams in the West, particularly because in the old system, the teams in the Mountain Time Zone or division would at least get the same bonus Boise State was getting because they'd be guaranteed to play them every year. But it's been a long going thing. First it was, you couldn't wear the blue uniforms on the blue, and then they came back and said they'll change that. And then they said, we'll give you the separate TV. I mean, it was a very smart deal that Boise State put together, because they had all the leverage. In a way, you could say they had no leverage, because they were going to back out of the what was going to be the Big East, because that thing kind of fell apart. And then the Mountain West had just lost Utah and TCU, and they were desperate, to keep a school like Boise State. So Craig Thompson kind of caved, but again, when you're talking about bowl shares and winning the Fiesta Bowl in 2014 and the money that went to the conference and the other schools, I mean, I get it from the other team's perspectives. They want to have a fair share of the pie, but also, CBS Sports, paid a lot of money for Boise State's road games. Maybe CBS Sports isn't as interested if Boise State's not in the conference to want to have a big package that would include their road games. So there's a lot, Boise State brings a lot to the table. In the large scheme of things, a little extra money I don't think is that big of a deal. But in terms of competitive balance, competitive advantages and all that, I think the conference basically said we've had enough, or Craig Thompson heard from the other schools that we've had enough. But I don't think this is over by any means.
BJ, heck of a job. That's really, really great stuff from you. Greatly appreciate it. Let's do it again very soon, shall we?
Yeah, it should be a good game on Saturday. Really looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun, and I hope it's a close game. It should be fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks, BJ.